What is up, everyone? Joseph Buer here, and it has been a while since I've posted a video to the Judy Hopps rigging series. I won't bore you with all the details as to why that's been, but needless to say, it's good to be back and continuing on with this video diary series. And the good news is, even though it's been a while, we're really almost done. We've just got maybe 4 or 5 more videos to go. This one right here is going to be a long one, so I might actually end up splitting it up into 2 parts. But in this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating the control armature for our deform armature. Now, usually in Blender rigging, a lot of the times people will use bones within the same armature as their control bones. But in this case, we're actually making a separate armature entirely, and there are a couple reasons for that. The first one being, it's just a good rule, it's just generally good practice, a good rule of thumb to have like a separate group of objects to act as your control objects that aren't part of the same armature or skeleton. In Maya, this is done through the use of NURBS curves instead of other joints to control your skeleton. And in Blender, since you use bones you can use bones as your animation objects, and you can create custom shapes for them. That's what they're generally used for, and that's why they're generally used within the same skeleton. But keeping them apart just makes things neater overall. It makes things more organized. Also, you can avoid having to accidentally parent your mesh with automatic weights to a control bone as opposed to a deformation bone. So that's the first reason. But the second reason, and the real reason why I'm using a separate armature for the most part, is because in the last video I showed you how to make a IK spline setup for your character's spine bones. And for whatever reason, Blender does not like it when you use bones within the same armature to control the bone chain you're using for your spine. And I'm just going to show you an example of that right now. So right here I've got 2 spine setups with chest and hip bones. Now the first one right here, this is all the same armature. But right here we've got 2 different armatures. We've got this one and we've got this one right here acting as the spine chain. Now watch what happens when I take this spine chain right here, click it into place, and now watch what happens when I hit Alt G to zero out the transformations. You can see that the chest bone went back to where it was supposed to be, but our spine chain, along with the curve controlling it, is still in the same location. Now, an easy fix for this is just to select everything and hit Alt-G again, and it goes back into place. Now, this can seem like a minor annoyance at first, and it's really not too bad of an issue if you plan on rendering your animations on only one computer. But say you're using a render farm, and every computer in that render farm is rendering 5 frames each out of your animation. So what this bug does is for every 5th frame that your animation is rendering out, there's going to be this weird delay, this weird update delay in your character's spine chain. So say your character is, you have your character bending over like this, and that takes about 10 frames to do. Well, halfway through that animation, when you reach the 5th frame, realistically your chain should be right here. But what's going to happen on that 5th frame is that update delay is going to kick into effect, and your spinal, your spine chain is actually going to be zeroed out in its initial rest position. And it's going to, so for every fifth frame in your animation, your character's spine is going to look broken. And there's going to be this weird, and when it renders the next frame, Blender is going to remind itself, oh shit, I forgot the spine chain needs to be here. So that's why we're using a separate control rig, because for whatever reason, using the separate control rig fixes the issue. So you can see right here, if I Alt-G, the whole spine moves back into place. So that's why we're doing it this way. So let's get started making our control rig. So the way we're going to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and select my control rig, and then over here in my outliner, I'm going to set the this from current scene to same types. So that way we don't get confused. And I'm going to make sure my cursor is in the center, and I'm going to go ahead and add in a new bone or a new armature. I need to be in object mode first. There we go. Single bone. So we have a new armature, and we're just I'm gonna rename that to control rig _01. All right. We are in business. And for this first bone, I'm going to call this master _control. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, first I'm going to select the deform rig, and I'm going to set, just so this is easier to do, I'm going to set that to wire just so we can see through it. While we're at it, I might as well set this to X-ray. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the head here. I'm going to make sure I'm set to increment. And we're just going to pull that out right in front right there. Also be sure you have axes turned on. And I'm going to flip that around so that the Z is pointing upward. Alright, and I want a master control _01. And this is essentially going to be what all of our bone chains are parented to. As the name implies, this is going to be the master control. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add in another bone, and I'm going to bring that up to the top right here. And I'm going to line this up with our chest bone. Okay. I'm going to set the vertex, I'm going to set it to vertex snapping. I'm going to hit G and then Z and then hold on control so we can align these two heads together. And I'm going to go ahead and call this control _chest _01. And I believe that's the way I want it facing. Let's just go into pose mode real quick and select this one right here. And yes, we can see that these two are facing the same. The axes are lined up with these two chest bones. So we are in business. Okay. Next thing, I'm going to jump back into edit mode. Center the cursor. Alright, next thing we're going to do is I'm going to duplicate that bone, bring it down some to right there. Actually, I'm going to bring it down further to right there. Make sure it's centered. Hit W and switch the direction. And then bring this right here. Well, we want this to be straight, so go ahead and bring this forward like so. Bring the just so this is all lining up correctly. Line those up. And again, make sure these are facing the same direction, and they are. So that's good. We are well on our way. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a, well, first let's rename this. So this is going to be hips. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to extrude another bone out of here. And just bring it up, as high as you want it to be. The size doesn't matter a whole lot. And just make sure it is unparented. And we're going to call this one CO, capital C, capital O, capital G for center of gravity. This is kind of going to be like a secondary master control. It's going to be what our hips and what our it's going to be what our hips and our chests are parented to. Alright, so go ahead and hit enter for that, and go ahead and select your hips and your chest, and then select your COG last, and go ahead and parent, Control P, and then keep offset. Alright, there we go. We are well on our way. So let's jump back into pose mode, and now what we're going to do is we're going to hook our spine chain to these two bones. Well, actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and select our chest bone. Real quick before we go any further, though, just want to keep things organized, so I'm going to create a new layer here and call this Control Bones. Going to call this Control FK Bones, and then this last one is going to be Control IK Bones. Now, even though we're on a completely different armature, you can see the names we had for our layers on our other armature have carried over, and that's fine. We can just leave it that way. But anyway, make sure those bones are selected and put them in the Control Bones layer, and then bring that back just not so we can see it. And alrighty, let's see here, deform. With your control bone for your chest selected, go ahead and select the chest bone in your deform armature. Select the control chest again, then shift select this, your deformed chest, and then hit Control Shift C and do a copy transforms constraint. And set that to local space, and then do the same thing for the hips. Copy transforms, local space to local space. So now, when we grab this, one thing we need to do as well is clear the parent for these. So the hips aren't parented to anything, so that's good. So just make sure you clear the parent for your deformed chest. Alright, jump back into pose mode. We're going to jump right back over here. So now we have control over that deformed chest. So radical. The next thing you want to do is now we're going to actually hook our chain, our spine chain, to our control bones. So let's go ahead and delete these empties. First, let's check to make sure these are named properly. So this is right. Okay, so this is the regular empty. So Okay, so this is going to be chest. Oops. Sorry, this is going to be chest, and this is going to be hips. And let's go ahead and select the control rig. And the bone we're going to use is obviously the control chest. And let's go ahead and pop into edit mode. Make sure you have that point selected. Go to reset, recenter, assign. Very good. Go down to the hips one, get rid of that empty, select the control rig, and then hips. Then reset, recenter, assign. Go into object mode now. If we select our chest, look at that. We have total control. And there's no update delay. Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay. We can go ahead and we can just get rid of these empties now. Let's go into wireframe mode, and the next thing we want to do is we want to take our chest bone, or actually we want to take our spine bones, if I can select them. I think I did. And we're going to add some constraints to them. So we're going to add a couple constraints to them, and we're going to add a copy rotation constraint. We're going to set this to local space, and we only want to rotate on the Y. So we need a couple of these. Now the first one is going to be copied by the chest. Is going to copy the rotations of the chest. So we want the chest selected. And the second one is going to copy the rotations of the hips. So we want the hips. And because the hips are upside down, we want to make sure that this is inverted. Okay, so and one last thing. The bone down here, this one, we want to go ahead and make sure that that is not inheriting the rotation of its parent, which is the spine bone right here. Very good. So go ahead and jump back into pose mode. So with this bone selected, and I'm just going to go ahead and hide the control rig real fast so these are easier to select. And with this bone selected, go ahead and select this bone right here, and then hit, if you've got dynamic spacebar enabled, hit space on your keyboard, go into search, type in copy constraints, and select this one for pose. So now these bones have copied the constraints of this one right here, so that's going to be less work for us. So let's go into the constraints of this and let's just play around with these settings. For the one bone closest to the chest, I like to keep it for I like to have the chest have 75% influence over it, and the hips only 25%. For the bone in the middle, 0.5 for each, 0.5 influence for each. And for the bone at the bottom, the exact opposite for the bone at the top. So if we go ahead and select those bones and bring back the control rig, and I just twist this a little bit and go back into the armature here. It's a little hard to tell, but you can see we're getting like a nice subtle twist in our spine. Alright, perfect. So let's see where we need to move on from here. So we've got the center of gravity bone. Okay, so next we're going to make the head bone. Oh, and let's go ahead and parent the center of gravity to the master control. Alright. Next we're going to make the bone to control the head. So go ahead and I'm going to just move my cursor up here and then add in a bone. We'll call this control head underscore 01. Grab the top pivot point, make sure we're still on vertex snapping, and then snap those joints in place. Now let me just check real quick to see what this is parented to. And it actually doesn't have a parent. Oh, that's right. This is using constraints. Okay. So we're good there. Let's make sure this is perfectly lined up, and it is. Alright. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and add in the constraints, our child constraints. So we're adding in, we're adding in a copy location constraint, and we're adding in a child constraint. Child of constraint. Alright, so the copy location constraint is going to copy the location of the chest. And make sure that's set to local space. Very good. And this is also going to copy the location of the chest. And make sure you set inverse on that. Alright, very good. Now I'm going to show you why we're doing this. So first thing we need to do is we need to add a driver to the slider down here. And we also need to add a custom property. And let's go ahead and we're going to call this property head wobble. And make sure the default value is set to 0.0 and then click OK. Now we're going to copy that data path. With our head still selected, let's tear open a separate window and go into our graph editor and make sure we're in drivers. Select the driver and go ahead and select single property, control rig, and then go ahead and hit Control V to paste in that data path. Change this var value to switch or whatever expression you're most comfortable with, and then just type that up in here. Now I'm going to show you what this is doing. So right now our head, and let me just set this to 1 so you can see how this works, how this is working. So right now if we take our head, oh, and let's go ahead and do a copy transforms constraint. Alright. So now if we go ahead and rotate our chest, we can see that you can see how the head is following with it perfectly. Because we have right now the child of modifier is in full control, and because it's the last one in the stack, or I guess in this case the first one in the stack, Blender is reading that one first before the copy location constraint. So if we go ahead and set this to 0, you can see now what that's doing. The head, okay, I figured it out. So when you have the when you have the IK kinematics set up for your neck bone, you want to make sure that you've got a chain length of 1. If it's set to 0, that's going to break the the chain. So all right, so now this is working exactly how we want it to. So when we move the chest, you can see the head when the head is set to when the child when the child of modifier is set to 0, and then you just have the copy location, then you can see the head will be independent of your chest of your chest animations, giving it this nice kind of bobble. When you got this set to 1, then your head's going to follow your chest rotations, your chest animations 100%. You can even kind of slide between these two to get kind of like a gradient almost, you know, so something like that. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So sorry that was that I got stuck there. But that's why I'm making these videos, so I can remind myself of this stuff in the future whenever I make a new rig and I want to improve upon it, or you know, follow step by step what worked the first time. Hence why this is more of a video diary and less of a formal tutorial. Alright, so now we're going to create the control bones for the ears. So I'm going to go ahead right here and move my cursor to selected. Go into pose mode again, go into the control rig, go into edit mode, and then add in that bone. Excuse me. So if that bone's selected, I'm going to select the joint and snap it to the very top of the chain right here. And let's see, let me go over here and see where my axes are for. Alright, so I lined them up with the ear bone right here. So if I go, so now if we're still in edit mode, I'm going to go ahead and rotate those until I get them roughly lined up. In fact, let me see where I have them over here. Oops. And the roll's at about 60 degrees, which is what I have right here. Awesome. Okay. So let's go ahead and name this, and we're going to call it Control Ear 01. .L, and we're going to go ahead and with that bone selected, we're going to hit W, and we're going to hit symmetrize, and it's going to create a mirror image of the bone. It's even going to automatically flip the name for us to .R, so we don't have to go in and rename that. Alright, now let's jump back into pose mode, and with go ahead and select this bone, and then select this bone at the bottom. Select this bone again, shift select this bone, and then hit shift control C and select a transformation. Well, actually no, sorry, this first one's going to be a copy rotation constraint, and make sure that's set to local space and local space. Also make sure your ear bone is parented to your head bone, so make sure you do that and keep the offset. Alright, so local space, awesome, we're correct. And then make sure we're still in pose mode here. Select the next bone in the chain, and now select the transformation constraints. Now with that selected, we're going to go ahead and check on extrapolate, set this to scale. It might be a little difficult to see, but underneath Y right here, set the max to 1, in this checkbox right here, set the first X you see to Y. So that's like the Y scale to X, which is what we want to rotate on. And then down here, select rotate. I don't remember if you need to set this, if you really need to set this to local space, but do it anyway. And then what was the value we needed? It was 80 degrees. So set the minimum to 80 degrees. All right? And then go ahead and select this bone right here. Then select this bone, hit spacebar search, and then copy constraint should still be selected. So go ahead and click that. And now let me show you what this is doing. So we can rotate our ear, no problem. But if we scale the bone, we can see where we can automatically rotate those other bones in the chain, and that's exactly the method we're going to use when we get to our fingers and our toes as well. In fact, I might even skip that part entirely and just tell you when the point is that you need to do it. Okay, so how are we doing on time here? We're doing okay on time. Alright, the next thing we're going to do, so let's see, for the head bone, copy blah blah blah, add transformation constraints, blah blah blah, be sure checking the rotation, yep, we're doing that. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the animation FK chain and the IK controller for our arm bones. So let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and just add in a bone. And I'm going to just, well, I'm not going to hide it right now. And then one more. There we go. As before, make sure these are lining up so clavicle will be easier to tell. So we actually want to and we are in perfect alignment. Go ahead and select these bones right here, and then select the clavicle, and hit Control N, and then recalculate the roll to the active bone. Looks like they were already correct, but it's always good just to double check. Alright, so with those selected, go ahead and take this bone select this bone right here, hit Alt-P, and clear the parent. And then go ahead and extrude a bone out of this joint and make it fairly large. In fact, we can go ahead and, this is the point now where we can hide the deformation rig because we're not going to need it. And, okay. So make it fairly large, and go ahead and create a, duplicate that bone and just shrink it down to whatever size you need it to be. And I'm going to go over here and take a look at my setup and see which bones are which. Okay. So this bone right here is we're going to call this one DRV underscore clavicle control underscore 01.L. And this one right here is going to be named DRV FK arm socket underscore 01.L. All right, very good. And we should don't forget to name these bones as well. So this is going to be control underscore clavicle underscore 01.L. This one's going to be control underscore not forearm underscore shoulder underscore 01.L. I'm just gonna go ahead and copy that name, paste it into here, replace shoulder with forearm, and right here change this one with hand. Very good. Alright, so what we want to do next is we want to take this bone and we want to parent it. Apparently it's already parented, so let's just go ahead and disconnect it. Well, I guess it doesn't matter if it's connected or not, but you know, good practice just to have it. Take the clavicle and parent it to the chest. Be sure to keep the offset. Alright, so here's where the fun part comes in. So we're going to take this bone and we're going to add a couple of constraints to it. The first constraint, and let me just make sure I know what I'm doing here. Let's clear the parent first off. So we want to select our clavicle control and then select the socket and hit Control C, and we're going to do a copy location constraint. We can keep the settings as they are, and next, with those still selected, we're going to add another constraint, and this one's going to be a copy transforms, and once again we can keep the settings the way they are, except what we're going to do is we're going to add a driver to this bone, manually create later. Go ahead and select your clavicle and add in a custom property, edit, and we're going to call this arm socket control. Again, make sure the default value is set to 0.0. Copy that data path. Let's bring out our drivers once again. With the driver selected, go ahead and set this to single property, set this to control rig. Control rig. Paste in your data path. You can keep this var or you can change the name. I changed mine to switch. Alright, and let me show you what this is doing here. So if we take a look at the constraint, you can see that the copy transforms is set to 0. So as of right now, our oh, and this has got to be parented to our socket. So let's make sure that's parented to our socket. Keep offset. Alright. So right now this is set at 0. The copy transforms is set at 0. If we go ahead and we take that all the way up to 1 and we rotate this, we can see that the FK arm chain follows perfectly with the clavicle. If we take that down to 0, however, we can see we're getting like with the head, we're getting a little bit of a wobble here when we move the clavicle. So that gives us more control in the long run. And I'll just set that back to 0. Alright, perfect. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add in the what is going to be the IK control. So let's go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and edit mode, cursor to selected, add in the bone. I'm gonna go ahead and name this to control IK arm underscore 01 dot L. Alright, I'm just going to go set this increments and grab that, and let's make sure that it is, let's actually bring in our chain right here, and let's just make sure this is lined up with our bone right there, pose mode. And let's see what's going on. So we need to flip this. And now it's perfectly aligned. Let's go ahead and... Alright, cool. It's not parented to anything. We can actually parent that to the master control. Keep offset. Very, very good. And go ahead and select your control IK bone, and then select the control IK deform bone, or the the deform IK bone, and then do a copy transforms world space. So when we now when we select that bone, we can see we're moving our IK chain. Very, very cool. All right, so as you've probably guessed, the many videos ago when we made that custom property for the original IK bone, so we could switch the mechanism bones between the IK chain and the IK chain and the FK chain, we made that custom property in those drivers so we could do that. So we're going to make another custom property for our control bone right here. Now the good news is we don't have to redo any of those drivers. All we have to do is just paste in the new information. So under custom properties, go ahead and add, and we're going to call this FK IK switch like we did before, 0.0 as the default value. Click OK, and go ahead and copy that data path, and then I'm going to go ahead and hide the control bones. And I'm just going to, I just want to see the mechanism bones because those are the bones that we need to alter. So go ahead and pull this over here, and I'm pretty sure I have the data path selected. So go ahead and just paste that in, one driver at a time. And this is like the really tedious part of this workflow. All right. All right, perfect. So go ahead and bring all those bones back. And I'm going to go ahead and hide those real quick. And I'm just going to select my FK bones and put them in here. I'm going to select my IK bone and put that in there. I'm going to select my drivers and put them in my driver bones right there. Alright, so now let me bring back my IK bones. I'm going to put my IK bones right there. I'm going to put my IK bone up there. And now I'm going to see how this is working. And I forgot, because I always forget, I need to do a copy transforms constraint for these FK bones. Okay, let me see. What is this? FK shoulder? Yeah, this is the FK. This is the FK shoulder. Okay. Copy transforms. Control forearm. FK forearm. Okay. Control forearm. FK forearm. Copy transforms. Control hand. FK hand. Control hand. Shift. Blah blah. Alright, so let me go ahead and go back up there, and now it's working perfectly. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. What's going on with the fingers here? What are these fingers parented to? They're parented to the MCH bone, it looks like, which is good. That's exactly where it should be parented to. Alright. Alright, next let's make some control bones for the fingers. And we're going to follow the same principle that we followed with the ears. So the first bone in the chain is going to have a copy rotation constraint set to local space. And the rest of the bones in the chain are going to have these transformation constraints. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and pause the recording right here because it literally is this exact same process for the ears that we did for the fingers. Or, I mean, it's literally going to be the same process for the fingers as we did with the ears. So there's no need to go over that again. All you really need to worry about is that your finger bones are lining up with the rotation of the of your deformed bones. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right here, and I will join you back when I'm done. And welcome back, guys. Right where so I've gone ahead and I've added the constraints to these finger bones, so now as you can see I can rotate them and scale them down to control the rotation of the forward bones. One minor difference from the ears, if we take a look at the modifier here, you can see that instead of positive 80 degrees, I actually have it set to negative 180 degrees for the minimum value. So that's really the only difference there. For this setup. Alright, so we got our finger bones in place, but we've got an issue here. So, and I'm going to show you that right now. So if I go ahead and move this IK chain up, and I set that to 1, thus giving the IK chain full control over the over our deformation bone, over the bones in our deformation chain, you can see our finger controls are kind of being left behind here, which is a problem. Now, we could parent them to the mechanism hand bone in our deform chain by using a child of modifier. The problem with that is it's going to create a it's going to create an intermittent dependency, I think it's called. I could be wrong, in our chain, and that same problem we were having before with the IK spline, where we get that weird update delay, it's going to happen again if we do it that way. So we need to keep things kosher. We need to keep things within the control rig. So the way we're going to get around this is we're going to create a new arm chain. We're just going to call it it's going to be a driver chain, and we're going to call it the finger parent chain, which, saying that out loud, makes it sound incredibly dirty. But anyway, it's incredibly tedious that we have to do it this way, but trust me when I say it's necessary if we want this to work the way we want it to, and it's just going to make our rig that much better. So, with that said, let's begin. I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to go ahead zero out the transformations. I'm going to hide the deformation. Well, actually, before I do that, one last thing I want to do is I want to add in the pull target here, because we're going to need it. What can I? Yeah, okay. I just do copy transforms right there, and you should be good. All right, now where was I? Yes, we're going to create the the IK chain, or the parent chain. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to select our the FK chain we made, and with that selected, we're going to go into edit mode and we're going to duplicate it. And let's just go ahead and hide everything except for that chain. Let's go ahead and rename this. So this is going to be it's going to be a driver. We're going to call it the finger parent chain underscore shoulder blah 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 .001, the whole shebang. Copy that name, paste it in here, change that to forearm, and then change this to hand. And this is what actually our bones are going to be parented to. So let's go ahead and unhide everything. I'm just going to go ahead and hide this, and I'm going to hide the hand real quick, and then I'm going to select all of these bones and I'm going to parent them and keep the offset. Alright, we are in business. So the first thing we want to do is select our shoulder bone, our control shoulder, then select the parent shoulder, and go ahead and do a copy transforms constraint. And we can keep that as it is for right now. Let's go ahead and select the forearm. Actually, before we do that, let's go into edit mode. Let's bring back our deformation, and we are just going to move this forward and snap it into place right there. Making sure everything is kosher. Awesome. Alright. Alrighty. And with that selected, go ahead and go into pose mode. So go ahead and select the control forearm, then shift select the parent chain and do another copy transforms. World space is fine. Then we want the control hand, and we want to get in here and select the control chain and do another copy transforms. Very good. Next, we want to go in here and do a into the parent chain and add in a IK in inverse kinematics. We're going to make this control. We're going to make this the IK arm dot L. Very good. And let's see, where's the hand? Okay, here's the hand. We want to go ahead and add in another copy transforms, and we want this one to be the IK hand as well, the IK arm. So, and it's freaking out currently, but it should work now. Yep, and let's just make sure the pull target is set for, and it would actually help if we rename this to the pull target. Control IK, and we don't need to call it pull target, we'll just call it elbow 01.L. There we go. So, and we'll just type in elbow, and there we go. And we need to fiddle around with this. Oh, let's set the chain length to 2, and it looks like we need to set this. Yes, about 180 degrees. There we go. Okay, the pull angle at 180 degrees. So now that's working. Now that's working. Okay, so now we have to go ahead and set up the drivers for this. So go ahead and copy the data path. Let's bring our driver menu over. And let's start right here with the FK, and let's go ahead and add a driver, single. And we'll I have the expression copied over here, so I'll go ahead and select that. Oh, whatever. I can just type it in. Switch minus. It's the exact same expression we were using before. And we'll set the single property, control, and we want to copy the data path and paste that in, and change that to switch and update the dependencies. And it doesn't look like it doesn't appear to be working, so there we go. So now it is working. So if we go ahead and you can just copy that driver. Let's go over to the forearm and let's paste that into both of these, both of the influences here. Now the great thing about this is we don't have to change too much just for the IK influence. All we have to do is just change that to switch. And you can see how that's working right there. And same thing down here. Let's go ahead and paste in the driver. And you may have to like reselect that in order to get the drivers to actually show up. Select the oh yeah, always remember to like rename your drivers. So select the IK driver and then change that to switch. Alright, now this should be working perfectly. So right now we can see it's set to 0. So those finger bones are moving with the hand right there. But if we set this to 1, look at that. Now our finger bones are moving with it. Our IK chain is moving perfectly. Everything is working perfectly. And let's just bring back our deformation bones to see this in action. Let me make sure I've got all the layers turned on, and I do. So let me just hide this real quick. I just want to make sure everything is on the right layer. So this one is going to be in the IK bones. It's already in the IK bones. And these finger bones are going to be in the control bones layer. Very good. Look at that. Working absolutely perfectly. Except for this small. There we go. Now we're in business. And I should explain what I just did there. I added a copy transforms constraint to our deformation clavicle from our control clavicle. So just so you know what's happening there. Okay. We want to make sure those are in with the driver bones. We can just go ahead and hide the driver bones. Fantastic. Okay. Alright, looks like we've got everything working in order. We've gone on a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and call this an end to part 1. In part 2, what we're going to do is pick things up with the leg. Now, for the most part, every step you saw me perform with the arms, you do the exact same thing with the legs, with the exception of the extra bone chain to control the location of the toes. We're going to come up with a different method for that, so you can skip that part entirely, but everything that came before that part, follow it to the T. And when I rejoin you, we will be in the process of rigging the other parts of our leg. All right, I will see you in part 2.